What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? I'm excited because we're going to do a little mailbag today. Just watched the Rose Bowl. Obviously, Ohio State dominated. And I went on with Colin. We recorded actually a halftime of that game. That's what you do when they're down 34 to nothing. So we did a little look back at some of the college games. I was gonna do something today with Jackson, but they moved back the other game. Hopefully they still play it. We'll find out in the next 24 hours. Notre Dame, Georgia. So we'll do that tomorrow, react to that game. So today I thought let's just do a mail because I wanted to get something up. So let's do a mailbag. Your boy was really hurting yesterday during the day. I've had back to back. My IV lady has come over twice, and honestly, it might have saved my life because I was not literally, but I was in pretty bad shape, and gotten back to back IVs. I've never done that before, and it's worked wonders. And now I feel like I'm on the mend. Just still head's a little stuffy, but my body, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was sleeping like 20 hours a day. It's like a dog or a cat. But now I'm alive and need to talk a little football. And it's 2025, so happy New Year. And yeah, let's talk some ball. But before we do, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. Here's the thing: it's 2025. So, do you want to do something? Get out of the house, go do something fun. There were so many ASU fans today at that game, and I was like, that's awesome. Hopefully, they use Gametime. Because if you want to go to a game, college or pro, a concert, a comedy show, you guys know the drill. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code JOHN, that's me, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, let's dive into the mailbag. We'll start with Kellen. John, what are your thoughts on the potential Chargers versus Chiefs divisional round game, assuming the Chargers get the 5 seed and beat the Texans? As a Chargers fan, I am hungry for another shot at KC, and we have a better chance of winning in Kansas City than we would be going on the road to Buffalo or Baltimore because the style of teams, we always play them close, but have lost 7 times in a row. We got to get them eventually. I do think Kansas City would much rather play like the Texans at home or the Steelers at home than not just the Chargers, but Denver as well. Because those two teams, if you look at their potential opponents, right, they can't play Buffalo and they can't play Baltimore, but they could play basically Kansas or Houston Texans on down. They could play any of those teams. And if somehow Pittsburgh were to upset Baltimore and Denver, let's say, upsets, I guess they probably wouldn't upset Buffalo, but the Chargers, yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be tough. I think more than likely, especially the way the Chiefs have played these last couple weeks, it looked like they flipped a switch. But sometimes when you flip a switch, you get the momentum rolling, then you just stop playing. Because this week they're going with Carson Wentz, which obviously I don't blame them at all for going with their back, the backup quarterback. But then you're not going to play another week. So, which they're a veteran team, it's the right move. But whoever they would be to play, especially if it is the Chargers, which I guess now I talk it out, is much more likely than than the Broncos. But I do think that the Chargers would have moment. They've just been playing right. They won last week. They'll win again this week, and then they'll if they beat the Texans, they've just been playing a lot of football. Now, like they'll be a 7 point underdog. Uh, I, I don't think the Chiefs are thinking too long and hard about it. It's the playoffs. They got to play hard teams. I mean, last year they went on the road and they beat Buffalo in the second round. But I do think they would just be more susceptible to the two divisional teams than they would be the Steelers or the Texans. I would be much more nervous if I was a Chiefs fan playing the Broncos or playing the Chargers, especially now with Harbaugh and Sean Payton, than I would playing Mike Tomlin or the Texans team. Like I would expect to beat the shit out of those two. But the other two, I could just see where it could get weird. Why is it so rare for GMs to be rehired after losing their first job? Especially if I'm a bad organization, I'd much rather go with a guy like Rick Spielman, Thomas Dimitroff, or John Dorsey that has shown they can put together a good roster rather than taking a chance on an unproven GM. Curious to hear your thoughts. I don't know. I mean, I was told a long time ago by a buddy of mine who was a fired GM. He said, "John, we don't get second chances, not like coaches." And I don't know why to define that, but there's something with a retread coach, right? Like Mike Vrabel's technically a retread, but no one looks at him like a failure or someone that you wouldn't want to hire. If Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick were 65 instead of 72, they would have easily been rehired. So I think part of it is sometimes you look for the next best thing. Sometimes you maybe that guy is more tied to your money. And when a guy gets fired, he makes financial decisions for the owner. So there's more of a stink that carries with him. I'm just speaking out. I don't know. I'm just trying to, I have no clue. Because every GM, the good ones and the bad ones, make bad, miss on picks, right? Or sign bad free agents. I don't know. I can't. Not sure why that happens, but it clearly happens. It's the most wonderful time of year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at the DraftKings Sportsbook. It's the season of giving, and we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. When you bet, just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. By his performance in the Peach Bowl, did Skattebo boost his draft stock to the first round? He reminds me of a 5'11 Peyton Hillis. I don't think Skattebo will be a first round pick. I think he will be a second day selection. One thing I think that's going to hurt him, and I can see this coming, is, and this is stupid because this is what happens when we get to draft season. He's going to go to the combine, and I would imagine he's not going to run that fast. Let's just say he runs a 4.7. I hope he doesn't, but let's just say he runs a 4.70. That won't be ideal for his draft stock. You can be like, Middlekauff, what are you talking about? I'm like, listen, I don't make the rules. These are just the rules, right? Anyone who's ever shopped for houses knows there are certain things in a house when it comes to square footage, the amount of bathrooms, the amount of bedrooms, size of the kitchen, the size of the backyard, how many car garage that factor into the market value of the home. No different than a car. Has ever been in a wreck? How many miles on it? What year is it? What model is it? Like these things factor in. Well, runs great. You're going to love living there. It doesn't matter because this is a market value exercise of where you get drafted. So if he runs slow, that will knock him down a little bit. But anyone with a brain, if you watch him, that guy's a football player and a really good football player. And running back is one of those positions more than most where instincts and feel for the position are stuff that separates guys. And if you have elite physical attributes like, Adrian Peterson is one of the most physically gifted running backs of all time. It didn't really matter that he couldn't catch or, ironically, for his size and strength, wouldn't pass block. But he was such a good runner, it didn't matter. Most other guys, you get nitpicked. And to me, Skattebo is just, he's just a ball player. And to me, he's got Jim Harbaugh written all over him. I feel like Jim Harbaugh is going to love that guy. If John Gruden was coaching, I feel like John Gruden would have loved that guy. I'll tell you who's going to like that guy. Andy Reid's going to like that guy. Why did early in the season Carson Steele get some reps? Because Andy Reid loved that guy from watching him play at the MAC 2 years ago. If you think Andy Reid is not going to like Skattebo, you'd be crazy. Now, they're not going to take him in the first round, but would they take him at the end of the second round? Pick 62? There are a lot of guys in this draft that are going to be NFL starters at running back, which I think can hurt Skattebo a little bit. My guess is he goes somewhere between 50 and 70, just based on not knowing anything. I'm assuming high character, all that stuff checks off. Never heard anything bad. But his 40 speed, which is stupid because as a running back, like how many 40-yard runs are you going to have? Saquon's and Derrick Henry are pretty rare guys that are long, breakout guys that have 60, 70, 80-yard runs. If you're getting me 20, 30-yard runs, that's all I need. But I do wonder if that's going to hurt him a little bit. But today was fucking awesome. How much fun was watching Skattebo just carry his team in that game? Question for the podcast. Do you think Ohio State lost to Michigan on purpose? Like, was it a strategic loss to have to play in to not have to play in the conference championship game? Watching them play Tennessee and now against Oregon seems like some sandbag calling might have been possible. Obviously, you're better off in a weird way not playing the conference championship game. If you lose that conference championship game, it's just you got to play the extra game, and then you still make the playoffs like Penn State. So you're just playing extra games on your body. And you look at Penn State, I mean, their best player, Carter, and is now banged up. Hopefully he's healthy. But I do not think they tried to lose that game because the way Ryan Day talked about it, the way their players attack. Now, the way you're saying, the players might not have to be involved in a sandbag, but the way they attacked everyone after the game, I think it's pretty fair to assume that they just had a bad game. Watching Michigan's defense against Alabama. Now, these bowl games, I don't put that much stock into, partly because some of these games, I mean, you have 10, 15, 20 guys opting out. Some of them to the transfer portal, some of them to the NFL draft. I mean, A&M had USC beat Texas A&M. Google how many guys from Texas A&M did not play in that game. So I think it's hard to put a value on a bowl game, who won, who lost, who plays well, who doesn't. But I do think Ohio State clearly tried to win that game, and they just played their worst game of the season. And one thing's pretty clear watching Ohio State these last couple weeks is I just had a buddy that scouts in the NFL say he thinks Jeremiah Smith's the best college wide receiver he's ever seen. I mean, that guy, when God made that guy, it's like that's what an NFL player looks like, I'll tell you that much. There's been a lot of talk about the flaws of the college football this year, mainly focused on the fact that 12 teams that are in are not the true actual 12 best teams in the country, and that it's not possible to get an accurate gauge on who the best 12 teams are because the schedule difficulty varies so much in college football. One fix I've thought of is this. They reduce both the number of conference games each team plays and put a set list of teams eligible for the college football playoff. This list would include all Power 4 teams, Notre Dame, and maybe a few non-P4 teams. But I'd be fine with leaving the non-P4 teams out altogether. That's a problem. Let me stop you right there. The reason they had to include them is so, like, the Mountain West wouldn't sue. So you have to include them. That's the reason they're in. Now, Boise showed, like, they're clearly a top 15 team in the country, but they have to include, like, to give them an invite to the dance or they would get sued. Each of these teams will only play 4 conference games, and the other 8 games would be played against other Power 4 teams outside of the conference. The primary goal for scheduling would be to even out the scheduling difficulty, so the gap between the easiest and hardest schedules is as small as possible, making a 10-2 Big 12 record worth the same as a 10-12 record. Thoughts? One more thing. Each team could be given the right to pick 2 opponents each year, so they can maintain certain rivalries. So Ohio State could be guaranteed to play Michigan and Penn State each year, and Bama could be guaranteed to play Auburn or Georgia, or same for everyone else, etc. I think the pushback would be the SEC says, what we do together is financially worth more than the other conferences. So when you get to play us, like our television deal on the SEC games are worth the most right now in the country. So meaning our properties, like when Ole Miss plays Georgia or Alabama plays LSU, those games are the most valuable throughout the course of the season, and the Big Ten is second. So when we split up those matchups, we neutralize or not even we diminish our earning power. So when we let Penn State play Utah, and this is not a shot at Utah, I love Utah's program, or we let Alabama play North Carolina, we are giving you free money. And that's where I think this is difficult is all these conferences are like independent entities. So it's just fucked up. I hear what you're doing and your heart's in the right place, but the SEC would never agree to that. The Big Ten would never agree to that. The Big 12 might, but those two conferences would not. I think I heard McShay or someone say within the last couple weeks that what is going to happen is the college football playoff buys are going to turn out to be the Big Ten winner gets a bye, the SEC winner gets a bye, and then you just pick the other two teams to get a bye. Who you think are the best two teams? It's like because the SEC and the Big Ten have all the power, and they're going to start yielding their power. So the SEC, what I think should happen is every conference should play 9 conference games, even 10 conference games, and then your other 2 conference games are against other two big, so if you're an SEC team, you play 9 conference games, and then your other 3 opponents are from the Big 12 or the ACC. And the Big Ten does the same thing. The Big Ten plays 9 conference games, and their other 3 opponents are from the ACC or the Big Ten or the Big 12. And it kind of rotates that way. Waiting for the mailbag. Why isn't Dan Quinn gaining any momentum for Coach of the Year? He took the second worst team in the NFL to an 11-win team and not a ton of talent. Something this team has not accomplished in over 20 years. I think the Coach of the Year is a little like the MVP, that the momentum and the narrative starts early and then it's hard to slow it down. Like Kevin O'Connell, people were all in on that early and then they never really pivoted. It's like what he's done is awesome. And obviously, if he beats the Lions, I got no issue with him winning the award. But they were making a playoff push last year before Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. They won like 12 or 13 games 2 years ago. So like his team's been good with a lot of these same players. Not trying to diminish anything he's doing. I would say the same Dan Quinn and Jim Harbaugh. Dan Quinn's team drafted second. Jim Harbaugh's team drafted fifth. They were dog shit. If it was comeback player of the year, but it was for coach of the year, it'd be between those two guys. Now, I think that Kevin O'Connell thing's pretty easy. They were not good last year. But yeah, I don't know. I just there's just no overcoming that momentum. I think if Dan Campbell wins this game, I think he has to win it because of how many injuries they've had. Got a question for the mailbag. Over the past year, we saw a running back market change dramatically, beginning 2024 with no one wanting to pay running backs big money, to running backs being recognized again as essential for team success, despite it being a passing heavy league. Do you believe this season running backs are being highly valued again is directly connected to having a franchise quarterback? During the past few seasons, we saw teams find their franchise quarterback, and now that a good portion has theirs, it seems as if now the running back in those teams are gaining or having career years. Also, if you do agree, do you think teams should focus more on paying big contracts to a dynamic receiver and quarterback duo or a consistent running back and quarterback duo? I think I would rather have one of the star running backs. Like I'd rather have, Gibbs on a rookie contract, but let's use Saquon, who makes 13, $12 million a year, and a solid wide receiver than a $30 million wide receiver and a $50 million quarterback and just random running backs. Now, Jefferson's a bad example because he's the best. But let's just use non like Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. I think you could make a legit argument. Would you rather have Jahmyr Gibbs, you know, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry? It depends how good your offensive line is and what style quarterback you have. But I don't know. The more I think about it, I was like, I'd rather have Justin Jefferson. I'd rather have Jamar Chase. You know, if you were an Eagles fan right now, would you rather have Saquon or just a middle tier running back or AJ Brown or a middle tier wide receiver if you could only keep one of the two guys? The good part, the argument for you guys, like we got them both. But I'm just saying big picture. If next year you could only keep AJ Brown or Saquon Barkley, I think it's a hard discussion. I think it varies player to player. The reality is you don't really have to make that decision because the cost of running backs is so low. Like it's linebackers, tight ends, and running backs are all under on average $15 million a year. So you're basically paying, and you could argue like if you're Saquon, I'm not a $25 million player this year. You do get kind of screwed. If Deebo stays with the Niners next season, why not fully transition him to running back? Ego? Seems like he could be McCaffrey light. Well, I think they've kind of transitioned him a little this year. They've put him at kickoff returner, which is not nothing. Like, and maybe he did it in college and he's good at it, but like, how many players, they wouldn't put Jamar Chase back there, even though Jamar Chase would probably be freaking awesome at it. They wouldn't put, think of some wide receivers you could put back there that would be good. Now Debo's unique, but I think they're already transitioning him a little bit. You draft Ricky Pearsall, Ayuk comes back. I think his role will just go back to more of that hybrid mold because he's not a true just wide receiver. That's not where he's at his best. He's at his best getting touches behind the line of scrimmage, whether that's passes or rushes. And obviously, kickoff returner he's really good at. As a dedicated Seahawks fan, I'm eager to see how our team rise to the next level. The quarterback position is crucial and curious about your thoughts on the best path forward. Do you believe Geno Smith is the long-term answer for us? He had notable success, including leading the league in completion percentage in 22 and earning Pro Bowl selections in 22 and 23. Alternatively, should we consider drafting a new quarterback to develop in the future? Some analysts suggest that the Seahawks might be sleepers to draft a quarterback, even with Geno set to return in 24. Or is exploring a trade for someone like Kyler Murray a viable option? If Arizona would be willing to trade you Kyler Murray inside the division, I think that's a pretty big red flag. I would not say that's an option, but maybe Ryan Grubb would like to work with them. I would just keep Geno before I trade it for Kyler Murray. I think the best option would be, I would sign Sam Darnold. I would take Sam Darnold over Geno, younger, similar skill set. I think just better player, or has a chance. I mean, Geno's this year has been a little all over the place, but he's a solid player. I do think Geno, the type guy he is a pretty good bridge quarterback if you drafted a young guy. That's why I thought Michael Penix made a lot of sense for you guys. Obviously, he got drafted way higher than when you guys picked. But I don't really know who there is to draft. I just don't think that guy's really there. So I just think Geno is not your long-term future, but he's just kind of your guy for now. He's just your best case scenario of just having a guy to fill that void. And it sucks kind of being in quarterback purgatory, but that's kind of where you are. You're in quarterback purgatory. Luckily, your team's still solid and you're competing to win, 9, 10 games. It could be worse. It really could. You could be one of those shitty 3, 4 win teams, but you're winning 9, 10 games and you're just in position. And your general manager is aggressive. And if there's a chance to pounce, he will.